I'm so nervous, I don't know why, but hey guys, it's Violet Shadow, and we're doing something slightly different today. Instead of reading a fanfic from Wattpad like I usually do, I have found a way to get authors' permission to read ones from AOC, so I'm so excited to present you the first AOC fanfic on this channel. Let's get started. This is a 1 out of 1 chapter fanfic, but it is part of a series. Please go check it out if you like this. Trapped by Kahara. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. He was just having a wonderful dream about a grilled cheese sandwich when Peter startled awake by his phone. He jumped up and nearly fell out of bed. Peter grabbed it and answered without looking. Hello? He asked groggily, looking up at the clock on the wall to see it was 3 o'clock in the morning. Wake up, pup. We need you with us in Manhattan. Some idiot alpha set all the rambots to kill mode. Tony grabbed the last bit out in annoyance. Peter instantly snapped to attention at Tony's voice. Okay, he said, grabbing his suit from where it was hidden under his bed and fumbling to get it on. Tony hung up just as Peter swung out the window and into the night. Swinging high above all the traffic, Peter made it to the batter in under 5 minutes, landing on a random roof to survey the area just like Bucky had taught him during one of the training sessions. Tony caught sight of him just as Peter arrived and flew over. You're an Avex, Spiderling, he said, tossing him an earpiece before flying off back towards the batter. He grumbled, putting on his earpiece. Man. Spider-Man. Not until you're 18, pup. Tony laughed. Grumbling at that, Peter didn't bother responding as he started evacuating the civilians who were caught up in the crossfire of the battle. Peter was inside a building, possibly a bank at one point, but at this point in the battle, you could hardly tell. Peter was trying to get this woman out of there. The building shook and his spider senses screamed at him to get out of the way. Peter shoved the woman out of the door just before the whole building came crashing down. Groaning as Peter came to, his brain throbbed within his skull. It was so dark that Peter could hardly see, even with his enhanced sight. Peter tried to move his arm, but found that almost his entire body was pinned underneath a massive slab of concrete. Peter was lying on his back. The only parts of him that weren't being squished were his head and his right foot, which, from the pain Peter was feeling and his inability to move it much, meant that Peter probably had something stuck through it. He coughed, the weight of the cement making it hard to breathe, not to mention the dust that seemed to coat his lungs with each labored breath. Remembering that his pack had taught him, Peter mentally went over his injuries. His head hurt a lot, and Peter could feel warm wetness in his hair, plastering it to his throbbing skull, but that probably wasn't diddly. His eyes were foggy, like he was looking through a slightly dirty glass. Whether or not that was because he wasn't getting enough oxygen or because of the dust, Peter couldn't be sure. From his neck down, Peter couldn't see his body at all, just the gray cement that kept him pinned. His chest hurt a lot, so Peter probably had at least a few broken ribs. His fur was burned quite a bit, but Peter knew from the lectures Bruce had done that to keep it moving, otherwise his healing factor would kick in and try to heal around whatever was inside it, making it worse. Peter was trying to gather enough oxygen to speak up and tell the others about his injuries when Steve beat him to it. Status report. The pack always reported by ranks, and since he was technically the pup of the pack, Peter would have to wait to give his report until last. Groaning silently in annoyance, he bit his tongue and waited for his turn. Bucky went first, as he was second in command. Working on clearing the docks, Clint. A few scraps, but nothing too bad. Sam, the third, gave a quick, I'm good, as he smashed another rumble into bits. How are there so many Roombas in this city? Tony answered him. I don't know, but I'm trying to track down where the signal is coming from, but it keeps bouncing around so I can't pinpoint it. Each of the pack gave their reports. Peter must have zoned out because the next thing he knew, Steve was calling his name. Spider-Man? Steve prompted. He was startled when he heard his name, trying to clear the fuzz from his brain. Yeah, what? Your report? Steve said, slightly concerned that the pup wasn't rattling off like he normally did when it was his turn to speak. Peter coughed and took a deep breath as he could get. Sorry, Cap. I've cleared like 3 buildings and some lady was stuck in a bank and I got her out, but the building collapsed. Before Peter could continue, an explosion came through the earpiece. Peter could feel the vibrations even from where he was miles away. Steve cursed slightly and Tony yelled out, Language! Steve let out a sigh. It was one time. Turning his attention back to Peter, he asked, Queens, are you okay? He swallowed thickly, thinking to himself, No, I'm definitely not okay. But if I speak up, the others might get hurt where the pack comes to get me. So aloud, he replied, I'm okay. I'm stuck and I can't move, but I'm okay for now. Clint cursed loudly, making him flinch at the loud noise. When did everything become so loud? He thought. Could really use some backup, kid. Peter whimpered under his breath, the guilt of not being able to help eating at him. Sorry, Hawkeye. Peter apologized. Steve cut in. You good to wait for us to clean this up, or you need help, Queens? He bit his lip, deciding to just stick it out. I can wait, Peter said, as determinedly as he could. Everything went quiet after that, and Peter relaxed under the weight of the concrete, focusing on just getting enough oxygen to keep a level head, like Clint had taught him to do, when he made Peter get into an old escape box he had from his circus days. I called dibs on the last one, Sam yelled, making Peter jolt a bit, and whimper at the ringing in his ears. Peter could practically picture Clint's face as he said, You can't call dibs on smashing a robot, Falcon. Watch me, Hawk, Sam said, followed by a smashing of metal. Natasha cut in, annoying the two squabbling betas. Cap, shoot is saying to fall back. They'll take over from here. Steve nodded. All right, move out. Already in the jet, Tony said, exhausted, evident in his voice. Peter whimpered, opening his mouth to say something, to remind them that he was still trapped, but found that he didn't have enough oxygen or energy to make a sound. Peter listened helplessly as the whole pack clambered aboard the jet. He listened to Clint and Sam continue to squabble until Bucky growled at them to eat. Listening to Natasha hand Steve his crush bars, and Steve grumbling about the disgusting taste as he ate them, listening helplessly as the jet took off without him. It was probably another hour before any of the pack realized the pup was missing. Usually after a mission, Peter would head home and grab a change of clothes before coming to the tower for dinner with the rest of his pack. It was only as they began to eating that they noticed the empty seat at the table. Natasha was the first to point it out. There was a moment of complete silence as the memories of Peter and him being stuck clicked into everyone's minds. As soon as it did, everything went haywire. There was cursing and scrambling as the pack practically trampled each other in the rush to the elevator. The entire pack was in the battle zone in less than 5 minutes, searching for Peter and calling his name. Where was he last seen? Tony questions as he scans the battlefield, wondering where to start first. I don't know, Clint said, racking his brain to think of when he heard from the pup last. I think he said something about a building collapsing. Sam was flying overhead of them, scanning the battleground for the signature red and blue of Peter's suit. I got a collapsed building. Circuit Seuss on the 11th and Madison Avenue. They all hustled there, blinking at the massive building that was now little more than a pile of rubble. How the hell? Bucky started. I've got a heat signature, Tony called from where he was digging through some of the rubble about 20 meters away. The rest of the pack joined him in pursuit of digging away the rubble. Steve and Bucky moved the largest of the chunks, while the rest pushed away the smaller pieces. Eventually, they pulled some concrete off of where and were greeted with a very much hurt and unconscious Peter Parker. His usually happy marshmallow scent was overtaken by the scent of hurt, betrayal, and metallic blood stench, which smacked the pack in the face as soon as he was practically free from the rubble. Peter's mask was turned so you could see half of his face. It was alarming. He had a pretty nasty gash in his scalp that had begun healing, with bits of cement still in it. The rest of his body was covered by cement, which they were hesitant to remove in fear of causing further damage. His foot had a piece of rhubarb support stuck through it that was caked with drying blood. Clint had to look away to keep from vomiting at the sight of the pack pup so hurt. Tony whimpered slightly, tears swimming in his eyes. Natasha had to put a hand on his shoulder, doing her best to comfort her packmate, knowing that Peter was still a pup to him. Steve whined at the sight of the pup, unsure of what to do. Bucky took a step back at the sight of him. It was Sam who took control, turning to the rest of the pack. "No, he's not dead yet. We don't murder the living. We help them." He dropped to his knees, his hand finding Peter's neck and checking for a pulse. He slapped his fingers in front of Peter's ears and slapped his face gently to annoy him to get a reaction. A tiny wince of annoyance answered him. Sam sighed in relief. "Peter, hey pup, come on, I need you to wake up for me. Just a bit," he called, trying to rouse the pup farther. Peter whined, waking up slightly, opening his eyes to see the pack standing over him. His normally deep hazel eyes were foggy with pain. His lips twitched as if to smile. The pack gave him a collective sigh. There was a flurry of movement as Tony whipped out his phone to bring in a jet and a look at the med bay of the incoming trauma. Sam snapped his fingers again to draw Peter's attention. "Hey, pay attention to me. I need you to tell me what hurts." Peter shook his head. He made a slow of trying to drag in a ragged breath, but really only got a gulp of oxygen, showing Sam just how difficult it was, and made it clear that he couldn't speak to him. Sam nodded in understanding. Okay, pup, we're gonna try and get the semen off of you, but for now, I just need you to keep breathing, okay? Peter nodded his head, whimpering when a gash in his scalp shifted. He closed his eyes to focus on breathing. Sam nodded, turning to Bucky and Steve. "We need to get the semen off of him so he can breathe, but he may have something that's puncturing his stomach that we don't know about. If we wait for the medical evac, he could suffocate. If we lift it, he could bleed out." He turned to Steve. "It's your call, Alpha." Steve looked at the injured pup for a long moment. "Get the semen off of him," he said, decidedly moving to one side while Bucky moved to the other. The rest of the pack waited with held breaths as the two alphas got ready to lift the hunk of semen off. Tony and Natasha had Peter's head ready to pull him out from under it as soon as it was clear. 1, 2, 3, Steve said as he and Bucky lifted the hunk just far enough for them to pull Peter out. Peter gasped as a mixture of agony and gratitude as Natasha and Tony pulled him out. He gasped, swallowing a big gulp of air, tears pickling his hazel eyes. He looked at his packmates, tears falling down his cheeks. You came," he whispered before closing his eyes and drifting off into sleep. A sob wrecked through Tony's body as he held his pup close, approaching the helicopters, wrapping his hair into his face. "It's going to be okay, pup," Tony reassured his unconscious pup. Tears of relief were streaming down his cheeks. "You're going to be all right." Oh, doesn't that just pull on the heartstrings? Well, if you like this, you're going to have to go check them out. Link is in the description. See you next time.